The Nintendo Switch is probably one of the most unique systems out there when it comes to physical games, because it uses a cartridge, and you might be being like, what? What does the fact of it being a cartridge mean to anything? Well, with how Nintendo is with its cartridges, they are very expensive to produce. So we've been seeing games throughout the whole Nintendo Switch life cycle of things going out of print and ending up being super expensive. And some of these games really should not be the prices that they are at. And it's only due to the fact of the Switch cartridge and the guidelines it is that Nintendo has when you're making physical copies. So I've been doing this series where we talk about the Nintendo Switch games you should buy before they become out of print, super expensive, stuff like that. This is a series we've been doing for years that you guys love. And I have another set of games to show off in terms of what I think could end up becoming out of print. Like I've said many times before, this is just us speculating. This is not factual. I don't want somebody in the comments being like, hey, I bought 10 copies of Garfield Kart. What do you mean, Max? Why is it not an expensive game? This is just us speculating. So without further ado, let's show off these games. This is not factual information. I don't want someone in the comments being like, Max, I just bought 10 copies of this game. Why is it still 20 bucks? For our first game, we're gonna be talking about Little Nightmares 3. Now, you might be a little confused as I'm holding the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game. But that is actually why I believe this will be a game to be on the lookout for when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Because the Switch 1 version is actually fully on the cartridge. The Switch 2 version, as you can see right here, is a game keycard version. Now, I'm holding the Switch 2 version to tell you that this is the one to not buy. But what I'm trying to say is, I think the fact that this is a game keycard will make the Switch 1 version of the game be a lot more popular, as you've seen a lot of people complain about game keycards. Game keycards is a very controversial topic. Depending how you feel about it, always leads to wars, and a lot of people are boycotting game keycards by not buying them. So I'm thinking that the Switch 1 version is going to sell more physically with the fact that it is fully on the cartridge. But I expect that Bandai Namco is at some point gonna stop making the physical copy of Little Nightmares 3 and really push the Switch 2 version of the game, especially when they start realizing that people that own the Switch 2 are buying the Switch 1 version due to the cartridge being fully on the game. So it wouldn't surprise me in the next few months that production on the Switch 1 version of this game stops. I think that Bandai is going to be full force with it just due to us being into the Christmas season. But I expect in the next 5 or 6 months, we're going to see that go out of print, and this will be the version that they're going to promote heavy. I just want to highlight once again that I'm talking about the Switch 1 version of Little Nightmares 3. I talked about Pac-Man World 2 in my last video, and for some reason, even though it was plainly obvious that I clearly stated that the Switch 1 version of Pac-Man World would be the one to be on the lookout for, people thought that I was saying that Pac-Man World 2, the Switch 2 version, was going to be the one to be on the lookout for, that'll go out of print, and then that will be the one that people are going to want the most. That is not what I'm saying at all here, and I hope that I made this even more clear, because I felt like last time I was plainly obvious, to be honest. Our next game is going to be another Crab's Treasure. This one got a physical release recently. I think it came out about a month ago, but I was surprised how long it took for this physical to release. And it's coming from I Am 8-Bit. This company has done a lot of indie titles in terms of releasing the physical copy, and a lot of their games have become pretty popular when it comes to the physical editions. However, a majority of those titles have gone out of print, and they're ending up being very expensive. And I think with how popular Another Crab's Treasure has been on all of these other platforms, I think a lot of people are going to want to get this game. I also speculate that a Switch 2 version of Another Crab's Treasure is going to be happening within the next 6 months. But I don't know what the situation of a physical copy of the Switch 2 version could look like. Because if they do a physical, I feel like it's more than likely going to be a game keycard. And if that's the case, everyone's going to gravitate trying to get the Switch 1 physical copy due to it fully being on the cartridge. The good thing is that this is a new release and you should be able to get it, but I would not wait long on this one because a lot of this I Am 8-bit stuff sells out in the next few months and GameStop gets rid of it, the UPC is gone. So if you see this, this is definitely one I would try to get as soon as possible rather than later. And the reason why I speculate a Switch 2 version is because it doesn't exactly run the greatest on the Switch, and as more dev kits come out, I do think that the team over at Another Crab's Treasure is going to be able to get a dev kit and they're going to release that Switch 2 version as soon as possible. Next one on the list is new Joe and Mac Caveman Ninja. The reason why I have this on the list, as of right now, it's not really an expensive game to get, but I have gone to a lot of conventions. I've also gone to a lot of GameStops, as a lot of you know, and I have been looking for this game for years. And just recently, I finally was able to find it. And the reason why I have this on the list is I feel like down the road, probably in the next 3 to 4 years, this will be one that people will want to get considering what the IP is and the history surrounding it. And right now, it's not an expensive game. I don't know if it's hard to find. I know it's definitely not being printed anymore, but I think once people start going heavier into collecting for the Switch, this will be one of the more sought after ones. Similar to kind of like when Burger Time got brought back onto the Nintendo Switch, I could see this having the same type of gravitation of people wanting to pick it up down the road. I would say that you could probably wait a while on this, but if you see it out in the wild for a good deal, definitely take a look at this. Throughout the series, I've always said that I want to avoid showing limited run titles into this series, mainly due to the fact that their numbered series is kind of one of those things that they just don't print anymore. Once it's released, it's done. And obviously they do variant covers and stuff like that. But there has been times that I still show off a limited run game every now and then. And I feel like right now with what's going around with this game regarding the Nintendo Switch, I feel like I have to show this off because I do think there is a good possibility that this one could end up being a lot more expensive than it already is, which actually I think it's a pretty cheap game right now. I think throughout this entire series, I've only shown like 3 or 4 limited run games when it comes to the numbered set. And considering that we've done what, like 10 of these videos, I feel like that's pretty good. But that's besides the point. Next up on the list is Lollipop Chainsaw RePOP. Now you might be asking yourself, Max, why am I putting this onto the list? It has just recently been announced that a Nintendo Switch 2 version of Lollipop Chainsaw is happening. And it's expected that a physical release is going to happen. But what's also expected with this physical release is that it's going to be a game keycard. But it's sounding like they're going to allow people that own the physical and digital versions of Lollipop Chainsaw to get a discount of this Switch 2 edition. And it's kind of one of those things I was talking about with the video earlier. People are going to gravitate trying to get this more than the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game if it is truly a game keycard. The good news right now, I believe this goes for about $50, so it's only $10 over retail price right now. I also try to put that into these videos, that way you guys know. I also really try to avoid putting games that are already expensive, that way it gives you guys an opportunity to get the game. And I really think that Lollipop Chainsaw is one that will go up, I'm not gonna say crazy amount, but it's gonna go up if a Nintendo Switch 2 physical happens and it's a game keycard, which a lot of these games are going to unfortunately be game keycards until Nintendo addresses the cartridge issue, because if you haven't followed, the Switch 2, it's either a 64GB cartridge or a game keycard. And 64GB cartridges are very expensive, so that's why a lot of people have gone to the game keycard route. Next up on the list is Tomb Raider 4 through 6. As of right now, Tomb Raider 1 through 3 is still an easy game to find. However, I've talked about how I feel like these games are going to go out of print just due to the cost of the cartridge and how cheap they are selling this game, because these games are being sold for $30 each. And I don't see the company producing the cartridges for that long. And once that is done, people are going to go crazy over this game, considering that it is Tomb Raider, one of the most iconic gaming IPs out there. I also feel like that the 4 through 6 collection is not going to be as popular as 1 through 3. So I feel like if anything's gonna go out of print out of those 2 games, I think this one could actually go out of print first. And the best part is this is a new release. It's $30. That is an absolute steal to get 3 games for $30. Tomb Raider, especially the amount of work that this company did on these remasters, really surprises me how cheap they're selling this, because they could have easily, in my opinion, got away with selling this for about 40 to maybe even 50 bucks. Next up on the list is High on Life. This one is a very interesting release. The reason why I say this is when it came out on Nintendo Switch 1, it ran absolutely horrible. It also visually looked horrible on the Switch 1. And so when the game got announced for the Switch, I was very surprised because I didn't think it was going to be possible to put this game on the Switch. And they did, but wasn't good, as we just talked about earlier. But with the Switch 2, they have just announced that a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of the game exists. It's actually already out, and this Switch 2 update was truly a game-changing update because the game visually looks amazing. It runs at a 30 frames per second locked, which is amazing. And it's got a bunch of Switch 2 updates such as mouse controls. My whole point in telling you this is that this update has been out for months at this point, and it's looking like no physical copy of the game is going to be happening. And now that this game actually runs good on the Switch 2, I do think a lot of people are gonna start picking this game up, because I expect that it didn't sell that great because of all the reviews that the Switch 1 version got. And best of all, it is a limited run published game, so it's not part of the numbered set. You can find this game on people's websites for retail price still. But eventually, I do believe that this is going to sell out because of the Switch 2 hype. There's also going to be that possibility that a Switch 2 physical copy could happen, but again, I think it's more than likely going to be a game keycard unless Limited Run does the release as well. Then I would say the Switch 1 version might not be anything special if the Switch 2 edition gets a true physical copy and it's on cartridge, but it could also get a game keycard. And if it goes the game keycard route, that's another reason why I think people are going to get this. But at this point of time, I don't think a Switch 2 physical copy is going to be happening, considering that this update came out in September. We're in the month of December. There's been no comments about a Switch 2 physical, but we also know that Limited Run hasn't done anything with the Switch 2 yet in terms of physical copies. So I would say that maybe wait on this one a few months, unless you really want the game, because the game is pretty good for the price at least. Next up on the list is MonadoMax. This one is one that literally just came out a few weeks ago physically, which kind of surprised me it took so long for the physical release to happen, because typically with these type of games, you typically only have to wait 2 or 3 months for that physical release. It's similar to Another Crab's Treasure, where I was like, I wonder if these games are going to get physical releases with how long we've waited for the announcement. But we finally got it. This one comes from Fangamer, however, and Fangamer has done a lot of Nintendo Switch titles in the past. But something to highlight that Fangamer does is they really don't do restocks. Now, they have done restocks for the more popular indie titles, such as Undertale, and I believe they've now done the updated physical copy of Celeste, but I don't think that they're going to be doing a restock of this game because the physical doesn't seem to be as popular. Even though this game has been very popular back in the day, it seems like the popularity of the physical has not been there. And I do think that this will be one that people will want to get once they realize it exists. So I'm expecting once this one sells out, it's it. You're not going to see any more of this. So I would definitely be on the lookout for this, because I've also been traveling to GameStops and it seems like a lot of GameStops did not get this in. I heard that there were some pre-order situations as well with this game at GameStop. So I don't think it's going to be around at GameStop very long, as most of Fangamer stuff out there, once it sells out, GameStop gets rid of it pretty fast. So I would definitely try to get this one as soon as possible. Next up on the list is Trails in the Sky First Chapter. This game has been selling out every time it's available for sale, but now it is starting to show up at places like GameStop. However, I do think that once this game sells out, considering who is doing the publishing for this game, I don't expect there to be a restock on this, especially with rumors of a Switch 2 physical copy happening with this game. and I'm expecting that to be a game keycard. We've seen some things happening with Trails that looks like it's going to be a game keycard through other publishers. So I don't really know what's going to be happening with this Switch 2 edition, but it's expected that a physical will be happening. So I think that's another reason why to pick up the Switch 1 version of this game. This game was also selling out when it initially came out because I think the demand for this was overwhelming, where they weren't expecting people to pick up many of this, and it is still selling out at places. So I definitely think if you can find this game, especially at a good price, however, I don't think you're gonna find it any cheaper than 60 bucks. I've been seeing some stores sell it for 80 bucks, just for example, when I've been at like a game store. So I definitely think that you should be on the lookout for this as soon as possible, to be honest, if you see it. And that's a game that I believe had some truly game-changing things happen to it when it came to doing that Switch 2 edition, which I think was like $2 upgrade. So I don't know. Hopefully they do a physical of that, and hopefully it's on cartridge. If they do a fully on cartridge Switch 2 version, I would say probably stay away from the Switch 1 one. I don't see anything happening with that. I know that there's been a theme with this video, and that's Switch 2 editions. But that is truthfully a thing that is going to be happening with a lot of these Switch titles. And with the whole physical game situation, a lot of this stuff is either going to get a physical, it's going to be a game keycard, or just not get a physical at all. So another game that I have to talk about is a game that I'm expecting a Switch 2 edition to arrive at some point. That game is none other than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. Now this game is awesome. However, on the Switch 1, it's got some performance issues. I'm expecting once the dev kit issues resolve, we're going to start to see the company that made this game get a dev kit and really take advantage of the Switch 2. As a lot of people are really asking for a Switch 2 version of this game, considering the frame rate issues that exist within this. Because when you put it onto the Switch 2, it's honestly still got some issues. We've been seeing some games where it automatically updates through the Switch 2 where it's running better, but this doesn't seem to be a game that's really affected by that. But this is one that I truly expect to not get a physical release at all if a Switch 2 version happens. And I think once that happens, people will be like, okay, let's buy the Switch 1 version, and this will become out of print. Not to mention, we're starting to see some Turtle games start to become taken off stores in different countries, and I feel like with the Turtles IP, you're going to slowly see that happen in a few years to where this game gets taken off shelves and off digital fronts because of the licensing thing. Obviously it could be renewed, but it looks like, for example, the whole Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection that happened, that has been taken away in a certain, I think actually more than a few countries. I think it's happened in a lot more. Obviously they can renew licensing and stuff like that, but I only bring this up because we did see with the whole Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection that came out a few years ago be delisted at other countries because the licensing ran out. So I think that's an important thing to point out, especially with how popular the Turtles are and how great their games are. Our final game on the list is a game that was considered to be one of the worst Switch releases of all time when it initially came out. That game is none other than Ark Survival Evolved. Now, when this game initially came out, I'm pretty sure it actually was the worst Nintendo Switch game of all time. The developers dropped it and never addressed the issues. I mean, this game was crashing, the game was running like 2 frames per second, it graphically was looking bad, and considering that it was Ark of all things, this was very surprising. 2 to 3 years later, the developers just randomly dropped an update that actually fixed the Switch version of the game to where it was actually playable. And then they went even further to still update the game. Then out of nowhere, they dropped the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of the game that makes the game run even better to where it is kind of comparable to these other console versions of the game. And now it's weird to say that this can actually be played on the Switch 2, especially with the history that this was such an unplayable game. The point of the matter is, though, that a physical copy of the game exists. And I don't expect that a Switch 2 edition of the game will ever come out in terms of it being a physical copy. So I have this on here because of a few reasons. The fact that this even got a physical release with all the controversial stuff with this game, in terms of how bad it was on the Switch, kind of surprised me. And I'm mainly putting it there for that. But also due to the fact that a Switch 2 edition of the game exists as a free upgrade. I think a lot of people will now want to buy this game physically after playing the Switch 2 version and it being something that's actually playable. And I really don't think the developers are going to make a Switch 2 physical copy. And if they do, it's probably going to be a game keycard. I know it was a cheap game to get at one point, but I don't know if it spiked a little bit with it coming to the Switch 2. I think that this is one to definitely be on the lookout for, because the version out there, they don't make any more physical copies. So it's definitely out of print. But just since it's out of print, doesn't automatically mean like, ooh, I have an expensive game. That's why we do these videos. This is just us speculating, things to be on the lookout for, all that good stuff. Guys, that is my list. I definitely want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Did I do pretty well? Does the tinfoil hat still working? I definitely want to hear what you guys are thinking. Is there anything on this list that you guys agree with, disagree with? Is there things that you feel should have been on this list? I want to hear everything that you guys have to say in the comment section below. But make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, Discord, Instagram, all that good stuff in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Whew. You guys don't know this, but I filmed this video with an extremely sore throat, and I was playing it off, and I don't know if it was noticeable, but now you guys know at the end that I'm struggling with my throat right now. Like, it is burning, it is in pain. I'm just glad to be done talking.